So my name is Emily Buchholtz, and I'm a professor in the Biological Sciences Department at Wellesley College. And this is my 31st year there, so I've been there quite a while.
Yes, you have. Can you share with us how you became interested in the field of vertebrate paleontology?
I think I have always been interested in history, and I've always been interested in biology. My father was a botanist. And I remember picking little coral fossils out of my Ordovician limestone driveway when I was a child and being incredibly intrigued. And I started college as a music major, and then I became a history major, and finally I became a biology major. And I think in a lot of ways paleontology integrates many of my interests together. So I guess that's what I like.
Yes, and one area that you have been very involved in is the history of paleontology. I mean, you've written several papers about Tilly Ettinger.
But I mean, those are the only ones I've written, and that's because actually I have a personal connection with her. Well, I mean, at a distance, I never met her. But it turns out that after Al Romer brought her back, or at least allowed her to come back, come to the United States by having a job at Harvard, that she could write on a visa that she had employment, even though there was no financial remuneration for her. She actually taught at Wellesley College, the course that I now teach. And so I felt kind of like she was my ancestor in a way. Yeah.
Well, maybe next you could share a little bit about your different research directions and maybe a couple of contributions that you feel that you've made to the field.
I actually think that I had a fairly atypical entry into the field because I came in through biology, and at that time I think many people came in through geology. And I had a major in, my PhD program was in evolution at George Washington University. But I was lucky enough to have courses taught by Nick Houghton at the Smithsonian. And he served as a mentor, even though he wasn't formally my mentor for my PhD, but he was my touchstone, and I really enjoyed him very much. And so that's how I came in kind of to paleontology, was through evolution. Interestingly enough, I'm of an age that was very difficult to get in through the field, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, but I remember asking Nick if I could go out in the field with him. And he just basically said, well, we can't make that happen, because there's no accommodations for women, and I don't take women on my field trips. And I've been eternally sad that I didn't challenge him in some way, because he was such a nice guy that I think he could have been convinced, maybe. But I think he had no way to make it happen without some trouble or something. And I wish I would have been a little more assertive.
Do you remember when that?
Well, it was certainly in grad school, because that's when I met him. But as for years, if I had to guess what year it was, I would say like 1971 or something like that.
So, of course, we've both seen how that has certainly changed.
It certainly has changed. And I must say I have some youth envy on that, because the young women who are brought up and just assume that, of course, they can be members of field crews. I didn't have that access, and also because my background was not geology, I think I found it very difficult to find field work to do. And when I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and started having children, it became even more challenging. But at the Milwaukee Public Museum, there was Diane Gabriel, who you may remember. She and Rolf Johnson ran a Milwaukee Public Museum field program. And I basically begged, borrowed, and steal my way into as be a member of that. And that was really my first good field experience. And I must say I loved it very much. Although, strangely enough, as you may know, I don't do it anymore. And I don't actually miss it at all. For the first few years, I worked with that Milwaukee Public Museum group. Peter Sheehan, I don't know if you remember him, Vertebrate Paleontologist. I knew him because I was teaching as an adjunct at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And I met, Peter was as well. And so I met him there, and that was another way that I had entree into that field, because Peter went to work in the Hell Creek trying to document whether it was a quick or a rapid extinction event.
Right.
Yeah. So I was out there for a few years, but trying to do your own research, because stratigraphic work is not my particular interest.
Right.
I actually like anatomy. Was very difficult.
Yeah, but at the time, there was more stratigraphic work going on than there was from the anatomy end, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it turned out that when I tried to develop my own research program out there, it turns out, at least it felt to me, maybe this isn't an accurate representation, that most of the good field areas, even though you could get a valid BLM permit for them, they were kind of assigned to different people who had their own field research going on, and you were considered kind of an intruder. And I thought that was a very difficult situation to try to navigate. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. The next question has to do with challenges that you've encountered. Are there some that you'd like to share with us, or maybe lessons learned along the way during your career?
Well, certainly not being able to get out in the field was a big challenge.
Right.
And a lesson learned was not to go on to someone else's university, some other university's field site without clearing it with them, even though you didn't necessarily know it was their field site.
Right.
Or, you know, even I thought when I had cleared it with the BLM, I thought I had done my due diligence, but apparently that was not the case. I think the other challenge was trying to get back into academia as a whole after my children were born. And that was very difficult. And I think that I would like to give a call out to Jim Hobson, because he was at the University of Chicago, and I was up there in Milwaukee, and I didn't know what to do. So I went to visit him. I almost can't speak of it without tearing up, because he didn't do anything in particular other than to let me know that it was okay.
Yeah, he was encouraging and supportive. Yeah,
He was
well, that's very
supportive.
important.
He basically thought, I did happen to have an NSF grant, which I had gotten while I was an adjunct at the
Really?
University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. It turned out to be the key to everything, because it gave me credibility.
Right.
And when the chance came for me to get a job, this time, it was, strangely enough, I've been at Wellesley twice. But the first time I was as a replacement in the geology department, because all the time I was an adjunct, I had been teaching intro geology at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Oh,
And so I had kind of adjunct cred in
Yeah.
geology. And that basically got me in the door. And basically, I think he told me that I shouldn't give up.
Right.
And it meant the world to me.
Yeah. Well, having supportive, encouraging mentors is...
And all the mentors, let's face it, were men. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. There wasn't an easy woman, or I would have gone to her.
That situation has changed, thankfully, today. Yeah. Okay. I guess advice for students. So the course of your career, I'm sure you've accumulated some suggestions or recommendations. If somebody wanted to enter this field, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, you know, I look at the young women in my department, and it's a different world. Because they've been able to be fully accepted in their field by default. I still wonder whether it makes sense to have your children early and try to go into it late, or to have your children late and have yourself already established first. And I guess my only advice is to follow your heart and do what works, because everybody's trajectory through children and partners and spouses and stuff is so completely different that how could you possibly give advice other than to say, hang in there?
Yeah. Well, that's actually quite good advice right there. Okay, my last question is just, is there anything that we haven't discussed maybe that you would, you want to bring up to add about the field, your experiences in vertebrate paleontology?
I guess I would just want to say that the field is so diverse, and more diverse now than it ever has been, that it's possible for not just women, but anyone to sample different parts of it.
Right.
For instance, I really have primarily a biology background, and I don't feel categorized or excluded at all. And early in my career, when I was trying to do the field work, I thought of myself as, well, this is it, you know? And in the last 15 years or so, I've been trying to integrate developmental biology with the fossil record. And now it seems like it's the most reasonable thing in the world for me with my particular background. So you can see that I've been in different niches.
You've evolved.
Or at least changed, yeah. I've been at different parts of the field at different times. And I think looking back, you can see that not only can different people be in different sub-parts of the discipline, but you yourself could be in different parts at different times in your career.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Emily.
You're welcome.